Trump and long-term strategy sounds like oxymoron to me. So is everything he does is very spontaneous.
Let's start with the latest news, which seems to be happening at the moment, which is that Donald Trump is suggesting that the US will consider sanctions and tariffs against Russia, particularly with regard to the banking section, the banking sectors. This would seem to be the first time he's threatened Russia with anything whatsoever. Does this give you any grounds for hope, Garry?
There is always room for hope, but I think it's more like PR stunt. Words are cheap. And Trump already conceded almost everything that Putin wanted, before even starting negotiations. I think Trump is trying to respond to the wave of criticism in America, even from his own party. And he wants to pretend that he's the neutral broker, which he's not. Um, there's so much can be done to diminish, if not liquidate, Putin's resources to continue the war. And I wish Trump would use some of these instruments, working with Europeans, not unilaterally. So before I see any actions from Trump, so I would not buy his words, his promises, because everything he has been doing so far, help Putin and undermine Ukraine. And the damage that he did for Ukrainian defense, for Western alliances, it's already measurable.
Yes, you would think, wouldn't you, that if there were a means of threatening Russia, of threatening Putin, then the obvious thing to do would be immediately to renew that funding to Ukraine, which was stopped peremptorily last week.
Absolutely. So that's the best way to send message to Putin, a real message, not just blah, blah, blah. It's to give Ukraine weapons. It badly needs, at least to fulfill the promises made by Biden administration, because Congress already has allocated funds, and this money has been ready to cover the cost of American weapons. And Ukraine needs it yesterday. Making, instead of this, some very hypothetical threats to Putin, it doesn't sound convincing to me, and I think Putin is simply laughing.
You're a chess player, Garry. Can you see anywhere in the way Trump is handling this situation that he has a long-term strategy, which may well be at the moment to beat up Ukraine and the European leaders, but that in the end he will be stronger on Putin when push comes to shove in any sort of negotiation?
I mean, Trump and long-term strategy sounds like oxymoron to me. So everything he does is very spontaneous. And again, there is always room for hope. But it's not just Putin and Russia and Ukraine. Everything Trump did and is doing now, it doesn't boost our confidence in his future actions. He's more concerned about creating more tension between allies. So announcing tariffs, then of course backpedaling, but then announcing again on Canada, on Mexico, spoiling relations with Europeans, threatening Denmark. Again, I see no evidence for Trump to have any long-term strategy towards Russia that could be beneficial for the free world and for Ukraine. And the amount of criticism and of calling names and diminishing the Ukrainians' role in defending not only their own country but also Europe against Russian aggression, insulting Zelensky, and I mean, playing this role of a tough policeman against the victim, not against the aggressor. Everything this, just combined, creates a very dire picture. And one statement doesn't change much. It's not enough to stop Putin's advancing. And I don't think it will convince Europeans. it seems to me that Europe already made her mind, and they are ready for the world without American military umbrella. And so the end of the NATO as a military alliance and the transatlantic cooperation as we saw for decades, which was, of course, the staple of the security of the modern world, this era is over. And Trump did it consciously, and I don't think that he has any intention of rebuilding this cooperation, because his plans, maybe not just his plans of the people behind him like Musk, like Vance, like Thiel, just are totally opposite to the interest of the global security, the way Europeans and many other Americans see it.
And yeah, I mean, the problem as we would see it is that Trump is operating in a country where actually this dismissal of Europe and Europeans' leaders, this wish to disengage just simply to stop this war in Ukraine and for no more American dollars to support it, is actually quite popular with the public, and particularly on the right of the political spectrum. It's the right which is driving this, isn't it?
Yeah, the right in general, it's not only in America, but if you look at other countries, whether it's Great Britain or Germany or France, the far right always express concerns and doubts about Western support to Ukraine, and at the same time expressed, if not sympathies, at least understanding of Putin's actions. And they were very cautious, very there was always very mild criticism of Putin, mixed with the general understanding of Russia's security concern and this kind of nonsense promoted by Kremlin propaganda. As for American public, I'm not sure that majority of Americans would like to abandon Ukraine. I think to the contrary. Even in the Republican Party, we hear voices that blaming Putin, and rightly so, for genocidal war, and pointing out that Putin is, and will be an adversary, and trying to appease him just doesn't work. It's the fantasy about splitting Putin and see, just taking Russia away from China. There's no geopolitical foundation for that. Putin is owned by China, so China, I wouldn't say control Russia, but has massive investments, and Putin's dependence on China in continuing the war cannot be underestimated. So whatever is the rationale behind this, the right wing concept that Putin somehow could be taken away from China and brought to our camp, it's just a fantasy. There's no logical foundation, and at the end of the day, Putin is a war criminal. And if you hear to what Vladimir Putin and his propaganda has been saying over years and keep repeating it now, they have no intention to end this war. It's not I'm saying that Putin wants to continue the war. He has been saying it. Putin's war is and will be to destroy Ukrainian statehood. That's what has been declared as the ultimate goal of Russia, and never had been abandoned, no matter what kind of negotiations Trump wants Putin to be involved. And I don't see how we can find a common ground. What kind of compromise? Because war has become an engine of Putin's dictatorship. To end this war means just to stop the mechanism that has been producing political, social, and financial fuel for moving this Putin's juggernaut in one direction. It's a further confrontation with the free world, and Ukraine is just one stop. Again, he has been saying it.
It's wholly amoral, isn't it? It's an interesting. It's interesting for us looking across the Atlantic at a partner who we have depended upon, perhaps wrongly in many cases, to see a president who seems to have no real respect for those ideas of freedom and liberty and supporting the weak. Are kind of the first time we might have seen that in a US president.
Yes, but it's not just supporting the weak; it's supporting the righteous cause. So there are many weaklings in the world, but we're talking about unprovoked attack against a sovereign nation, a democratic nation, and America somehow failed to throw its might, military economic might, behind Ukraine. Yes, Biden did it, but also not wholeheartedly. So Biden administration also to be blamed for not providing necessary assistance to Ukraine to win the war before Trump actually took over. And as for Europe and the United States, you can hardly blame Europeans for relying on America during the Cold War. But I think after the end of the Cold War and after there were signs of America's fatigue in global affairs, and it was clearly shown even by Obama administration, it was time for Europe to start thinking about building its own security perimeter. Europe is 10 years late because after Crimea's annexation and beginning of the war in eastern Ukraine, Europe had to consider that at one point America could walk away or just show little interest in direct confrontation with Russia. And European nations, especially those close to Russia, and they have been, by the way, saying that Eastern Europeans, Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Poles, they have been shouting. But most of Europe, the biggest European powers, Germany, France, okay, Great Britain, it's before, after Brexit, still European power, showed little interest in investing heavily in military production and war machine at large. And even after February 24th, 2022, it's just the beginning of the full-scale invasion, we saw more words than actions. So much can be done. I mean, if you tell me that Germany couldn't boost military production to supply Ukraine with millions of artillery shells, I would believe you. And the fact is that North Korea, as of today, gave more to Russia than the entire Europe to Ukraine. It tells you that European politicians were behind the events. They were just, it was a lag between the necessity, the bare necessity to act, and very slow reaction, indecisiveness, weaknesses, and what do you expect? Trump and Vance, they kind of political animals that they respect only force. That's why they look at Putin and they see, the guy who's willing to spill blood and just kill. And they look at Europeans and they see nothing but meddling and waffling and looking for some kind of compromise. You can't win the war on consensus basis. The fact is that Hungary is still the voting member of European Union while being recognized as a Putin's Trojan horse tells you everything.
Should they have been kicked out, Hungary?
No, at least you have to remove them from the voting procedure. So I would say 6 months moratorium on vote and any funding from European Union could be a cold shower for Hungarian people, and let's see how they would respond. But it's not just Hungary. It's overall mood in Europe, because Putin is at war with Europe and with the free world. Europe is still not at war. There was not a single act of European governments that indicate that Europe was at war with Russia or recognize the fact that Russia is a real threat until now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there was not even such a diplomatic gesture as recalling ambassadors after February 2020.
Indeed.
Exactly. And also, while there are sanctions, Europe doesn't prevent European companies, even from the countries that are staunchest supporters of Ukraine, like Estonia or Poland or Finland, to do business with Russia via third countries.